Condition and public events.
Get afforded. They have to waste tuition.
Well, here we go. Cheryl Teamer serves as the Senior Vice President for Public Affairs at the New Orleans Convention and Visitors Bureau. In her role at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, she advocates on behalf of the tourism and hospitality industry that employs more than 80,000 people, serves more than 12 million visitors, and generates more than $6.4 billion in economic impact. Cheryl's professional portfolio includes her previous role as the founder of both the Teamer Strategy Group and the New Orleans Custom Tours and Events. Before that, she served as the Regional Vice President for Government Relations at Harris Entertainment. Before joining Harris, she was an attorney with the law firm of Adams and Reese. She has served as the Chief Intergovernmental Relations Officer for the City of New Orleans and as the attorney for the Louisiana House of Representatives Committee on Municipal, Parochial, and Cultural Affairs. In addition, she has served as an adjunct professor at the University of New Orleans in the College of Urban and Public Affairs and has lectured extensively on lobbying techniques and legislative strategy. She graduated cum laude with a Bachelor's of Art degree from Spelman College in Atlanta. She also graduated from Tulane University Law School, where she was a member of the Moot Court Honor Board. Since completing her formal studies, she has furthered her education by doing 2 international fellowships of urban affairs, the McCloy Fellows Program and the Clare Fellows Program, one in Germany and one in Japan. In addition, she has completed several leadership programs, including the Metropolitan Area Committee Leadership Forum, the Aspen Institute, New Orleans, and the Regional Leadership Institute. She's a strong proponent of public service and is active in a variety of civic and charitable organizations. She's also an active member of the New Orleans chapter of the Lynx Incorporated and a sustaining member of the Junior League of Greater New Orleans. Round of applause for Cheryl Teamer. You have a robust and very diverse resume, and for someone who may be a student saying I'm interested in public affairs or planning or building or medicine, and they see you kind of sitting now working in tourism, although you started, which seems to be in a very distant place. How did you get there?
Well, one thing, in fact, I was sharing this with a group yesterday, that I let go and I just stopped trying to plan everything. I just accepted opportunities when they came. Didn't, some people get so stuck on a path that they miss the scenery when they're going by because they're just walking straight ahead and they don't take time to appreciate situations and opportunities when they arise. Every experience I've had has just sort of happened. And I think, you have to rely on your confidence in yourself and your abilities and the preparation that you have. I mean, you all are smart people. You're educating yourselves. You're taking advantage of life's lessons, and you have to just trust that the decisions you make are going to be good decisions. But, I grew up in a family where my father always said, what's the worst thing that could happen? You always have somewhere to go. There's a safety net, and it might not be a financial safety net, but you know that you have people who support you, and they want you to succeed, and they'll tell you, pat you on the back and tell you, that's okay. That wasn't the best thing for you, do something else.
What's the, how do you go about calculating a good decision when you're starting out?
Some people use the term gut check. You just know it. You've got to look at it and make sure that, first of all, you got to keep your lights on. That's the biggest thing. I mean, it's got to be something that you can afford to do. But I think you have to trust yourself. Again, you just have to, I get that gut instinct. I'll tell you a story. The way that I ended up in my current position was I went to meet with Stephen Perry, who is the president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we were talking about something completely unrelated. And in the middle of our meeting, he stopped and he said, Cheryl, would you consider coming to work at the Convention and Visitors Bureau? And I said, hadn't really thought about it. He said, why don't you really give it some thought, because I need somebody like you. And I went home that night and I thought about it. And about a week later, I called him. I said, I want to come see you again. And it was just that instinct, that gut check, that this was the right thing for me to do. You really have to, it comes down to trusting yourself.
How do you go about um, putting together a starting strategy that equals what you were saying? One, trying to keep the lights on. Let's say it's a whether it's a first career or second career, you're trying to keep the lights on. At the same time, you want to do something that you enjoy. Although most people, especially graduating from school these days, you hear the constant message that you will not have an opportunity to do what you enjoy. So go find something that you can make some money doing.
Right.
And then third, how do you stay aware of things that may not be happening on the things that you're working on? So if you're working at a hotel and you're a bartender or you're the bellman or you're working in some department, how do you get an opportunity to talk to somebody about sports or talk to somebody about working in another field?
Right. Well, let me start with the last thing first.
Okay.
I think opportunities come out of challenges. I always say challenges create opportunities. So if you're working in a hotel and you decide that you have aspirations to be an executive at a sports organization, well, if an athlete happens to be in your hotel, if someone in the sports industry happens to be in your hotel, there's certainly nothing wrong with introducing yourself and saying, hi, I'm Irvin. I'm very interested in this industry. What do I do? Find opportunities to expose yourself to those people. Where do they go? What kinds of events are they at? Meetings. You can't be afraid of people. No one's going to look for you. You got to go look for them. You got to seize the day. You got to make things happen for yourself. In terms of a strategy, I will share with you that I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm working in the tourism industry. I decided that a couple of years ago that I wanted to do something completely different with my life. And that's scary. And because, like I said, you got bills and responsibilities and obligations. I went over to Delgado and I registered for the professional tour guide program. And I was sitting in class listening to people who talk about the things that they wanted to do. And they said, well, what do you do for a living? I said, not that much. I said, I'm going to be a tour guide. And they said, that's kind of neat. I took that class. I'm now a licensed, certified professional tour guide. It's just, once again, jumping off cliffs and knowing that you're going to land on a cloud because you're prepared. And sometimes you just have to make those decisions that you want to do something interesting and different and challenging and not stay in the same position. Can you imagine doing the same thing every day for the rest of your life? That would not be exciting to me. So now I'm in the tourism industry.
You're a black woman and coming from a majority black city with a high poverty rate, but obviously you're a success story. What about the issues that there's been a lot of discussion increasing around women's place in leadership, at the table, in the workplace, at the leadership table, being able to make decisions and having more opportunities? How's that affected you in your career?
That's a great question. I have never gone into a work situation going, oh, I'm a girl, I'm not equal. I think you have to fight for your seat at the table. I mean, this is a male-driven society. It is what it is. If you're in business, chances are you may be in the room and you may be the only woman in that room. But you have to fight for your seat at the table. You have to show up on time. You have to be prepared. You have to do your homework. Unfortunately, you may have to work a lot harder. You may have to stay late. I've slept in my office during my career. In the early days, I was a lawyer for our state legislature. I worked for all 105 members of the House of Representatives, and there are many nights that I had my pillow and my blanket in my office. But to answer your question more specifically, Irvin, I think that it is hard still. I mean, none of us are naive, but I think you just have to push through and you have to fight for your seat at the table and you have to make sure that you're the most prepared person in the room so that you earn people's respect.
somebody has had as many positions as you've had and also been an entrepreneur. And so you've hired a bunch of people, you've managed a bunch of people, you've worked for a bunch of people, you've worked in government, in the private sector, in law firms. Let's talk about the art of interviewing. What's the art of interviewing? How do you get a job today, right now? If somebody wanted to come get a job with you right now and you were looking to hire them, what's the first things you're going to be looking for?
The first thing I'm looking for is personality. I'm looking for personality because I can teach you what I need you to know. But I need someone who's not going to be afraid of people, someone who's going to work hard, someone who has integrity, someone who cares very much about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and somebody I can trust. And so I look for personality first. Do we connect?
Give me an example of that.
Eye contact. I want someone that's going to look me in the eye and talk to me. If they walk in and they're like, yeah, well, Cheryl, I really want to work for your organization, and I think, it'd be nice. I want that person that walks in and says, I really want this job. What do I need to do to get it? Because I want to do this. You asked, I'm being honest.
Okay, personality, what's next?
They got to be smart. And I don't mean read every book in the library smart. I mean common sense smart. Somebody who listens aggressively and intently so that I don't have to tell them something 25 times. They're listening and they're reading between the lines, and they're a self-starter. And I think that's a frustration that a lot of employers have is if somebody has to tell you how to do it and why to do it 18 times, they're just going to do it themselves, and then they don't need you, right? So I find that a lot of people spend time writing things down. You're communicating with them, and they're so busy taking notes that they're not listening aggressively. They're not trying to understand how to think through a situation or your expectations or what you want them to do. And so that's something that I'm looking for. I want someone with good common sense, who's intelligent, that can learn.
Let's take a moment on that one. Okay, how do you know if you have good common sense? And is that something you can develop? Let's say I'm here, I'm in class, first time I'm hearing this in the interview and say, okay, I check on the personality. Now, common sense, let me figure out if I got good common sense. Like, how do you figure out if you have good common sense, or how do you develop? He's like, I really I want to do this. How can you work on that?
Here's an example.
Okay.
Your professor asks you to show up tomorrow for a lecture.
Right.
Okay. You show up and you bring your iPhone and you put in your earbobs and you're listening to iTunes during the whole lecture because you just want him to see you showed up, right? You're not listening. You're not participating. And you have no idea what he's talking about. But it's more important to you that he see you show up. That's a problem. Because if you're really trying to get ahead, you're listening very aggressively to what your professor is saying. So that right after that lecture, you're going up and saying, sir, that was an awesome lecture. I really enjoyed it. I hope we get to talk about that sometime. If you ever need any volunteers, I'd be happy to help you because what you said really hit home. You're going to remember that student. You're going to remember them, and not only are you going to remember them the next class, you're going to remember at the end of the semester. And that might be the person that you want to hire when you have an opening for a student, an intern, or an entry-level position. It's making people aware of who you are and showing them that you're hungry and that you want the job and that you're going to do a good job. I've interviewed a lot of people in my career. I supervised 40-some-odd people at one time. And I can't tell you, we could be here all day and I could tell you stories about things that people do. And I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be. I've learned, I've had a lot of hard lessons in my career. And I've had a lot of tough bosses. And hopefully every experience, nobody expects you to be perfect, but every experience that you have should be a learning experience. It should be a positive experience, whether you feel that way at the time. And I think the last thing I would say is that sometimes it's best to just say nothing. If you get in a situation where someone's correcting you or offering you constructive criticism, even if you don't think it's fair, just be quiet. Just stop. stop and say, you know what, maybe I didn't handle that the best way. Maybe I didn't do the way I should have. I'm going to impress them the next time. I'm going to knock the ball out of the park the next time, instead of sitting there going, how dare he talk to me like that? I'm smart. If you have to tell us you're smart, then chances are there's a problem.
Someone's got good common sense, they're smart, and they have a good personality. What's left on the table to make a decision whether or not you're going to hire them?
And it comes down to that connection, making that connection. And that's why I think eye contact is important. I think when you walk in showing people, I can tell a lot by looking in people's eyes. And so it's up to you, if you want the job, to make that connection with me, right? You're selling yourself. You're on stage from the moment you walk in that room. You got to convince me that you deserve the job. I came out of the gaming industry where some interviews are done with 20 people at one time. Where 20 applicants are standing there together trying to impress somebody to show them that they're the brightest, shinest penny. I've been in interviews before where I've been interviewed by as many as 15 people at one time. It's called a panel interview, where you're sitting in the middle of the room and all these executives are sitting around a conference table firing questions at you, and you have absolutely no idea what they're going to ask you. And you're making it up as you go based on what you think is the best answer. But you know what? You make sure you look them all in the eye and you answer honestly in the best way possible. And then the rest is up to, fate.
Let's talk about leadership.
Okay.
Some people are good leaders. Some people are not leaders at all. What makes a good leader, and what makes someone not a good leader?
Well, everyone can lead if they want to. Some people should not lead. They might be better off following. But I think a good leader is someone who makes the best decision they know how to make given the facts and the circumstances at hand. And then they lead aggressively. And I don't mean yelling and screaming and chastising people. But they lead with vision. They lead with courage. They lead with integrity. That's a good leader. Right? Some people think leading means being in charge. Well, you're not really in charge if no one behind you respects you, right?
What makes bad leadership qualities? How do you know? What are the signs?
I am not a fan of people who use their authority or their leadership position to intimidate, to terrorize, to undermine, to destroy, to create a culture and environment that's negative, that's not efficient, and that doesn't really accomplish a lot other than work. I think good leaders reach back. They look for potential in people. They develop talent. They try to move people forward. If you've got someone in your class, let's use this class as an example. You've got someone in your class and you know that Sandy's been missing from class. She hasn't been to class for the last 2 class periods, and it's time for an exam. A leader goes up to Sandy and says, I haven't seen you. Is everything okay? You need the notes? Someone who's not a good leader says, don't even tell Sandy we have a test coming up, because then I'm going to get a better grade because my name's going to be at the top of the class because I know that we have a test and I'm going to study. Because that person who asked Sandy, does she need help, doesn't care about being number one. They care about everybody moving forward together, and that's a good leader.
If you don't know what it is you want to do, I hear this from some students, I hear this from young people starting out, and sometimes I hear this from people who are looking for second careers and they really haven't enjoyed what they've been doing. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what it is you want to do and you're not passionate about anything, which is hard for me to understand from my perspective, but I hear it from people a lot. What's your advice to figuring out the next steps?
My advice is take a piece of paper and sit down and write, what do I like to do? And that's different from what you want to do. What do I like to do? You like to play music. You love music. Now, being able to do what you like doing is a blessing and a gift, right? Everybody can't make a living doing what they love to do. but it starts to give you an idea of what you want to do. I wanted to be an architect. I'm bad at math, so I didn't become an architect. But you know what? I build dollhouses. I build dollhouses, miniature dollhouses, 1-inch scale. And that's what I like to do. I didn't get to do what I really thought I wanted to do. I went to law school instead because I figured there was less math.
Okay, so how do you get from writing down what you like to do to materializing that to be reflective of where you select your professional environment?
Well, I think I like to use examples. So here's another one. I like, not me, but just the generic I like clothes. And do you like to design clothes? She's smiling, her face lit up. Okay, you like clothes, right? Okay, so you like clothes. Would you ever want to have a store?
Yes, I have a store.
You have a store.
Yes.
What kind of store?
It's an online store.
Awesome. She has an online store. So she's combining what she likes to do with what she might want to do. And you're going to figure out how to make that work for your career, right? So it's, there's no perfect science, or people use the term secret sauce. There's no perfect science, no secret sauce, no magic formula. I think a lot of it is trial and error. You may decide as you do your business online that you want to branch off into some other form of e-commerce, or you might want to do something completely different, like go overseas and look for textiles, or the dye that's used in the clothes, or just go in a completely different direction. But I would say to young people in college that life is very short. And it can be a long, hard road if you're dragging yourself someplace every day that you really don't want to be. So think about what you like and find something that you like that you can be successful at. And you may switch gears 8 or 9 times. It's okay. There's nobody's counting.
Let's talk about your family a little bit.
Okay.
Because we left all that stuff
Won't
out.
name names to protect the innocent.
We left all that stuff out. But some people have a net. You've had a great example to follow in terms of somebody making an impact on the place where they live, and adding value to their community. So why don't you give us a little background of your family somewhat?
Well, I grew up with a father and a mother who were very committed to the community and to service. And my father used to tell us all the time that service is the rent that you pay for the life that you lead. That if you are fortunate, if you are given certain opportunities, then you owe it to the world to, now this generation says, pay it forward. You owe it to the world that you live in to pay it forward, to give back, to reach back. In New Orleans, we live in a community, according to a survey that the mayor talked about the other day, where 52% of African American men are unemployed. Well, I decided to start a charter school with a group of people. It's now open. It's been open. We're in a year 2 because we've all got to reach back. We've got to understand why that number is 52% and what we can do as a community to change that. How we educate people, how we provide people with the resources that they need to succeed. Because if we don't give back, if we don't reach back, who's going to do it? The mayor had a great quote the other day when he said, "There's no cavalry coming to rescue New Orleans. We've got to rescue ourselves." So, it starts at home. It starts with your family unit. It starts with how you treat each other within the boundaries of your own home. Respect, civility, kindness, friendship, and integrity. And then as you move forward in life, sharing that with people, with other people.
When I attended your mother's funeral, there was some most amazing comments I've heard in my entire life. Tell us a little bit about your mother and why
1,500 people came to her
1,500
funeral.
people came to her funeral, and at least 1,499 of them had an individual story about
Yeah.
her, from the tennis court to
Right.
mentorship.
My mother was always very athletic, loved sports. And so you talked about finding what you'd like to do and making it work for you. Well, she decided to study physical education. And in those days, women did not study physical education. And she was a professor at Dillard University teaching physical education. And she thought it was terrible that there wasn't a women's athletic program. So she started the women's athletic program. She started the women's basketball team, and they won district by district, tri-district, and went to the national championships twice. And that team still exists today. And she believed in the spirit of teamwork, in coaching other people. Again, that reaching back, helping and encouraging people who may not have the same abilities that you have, that encouraging people to push themselves. Her students, as you indicated, many of them contact us today and they say, your mom, some of the lessons she taught us about sportsmanship, about life, we're teaching our kids today. And that just goes back to the other question you asked me about what we want the world to be and what we feel like we should do in leadership. Leadership is, again, about helping other people move forward. It's not about yourself.
When you're a student, especially at the university like University of New Orleans, and you may be a first-generation college student, or you working a job, or you're at school, typically the student is going to be on the side of, from what the survey recently said, liberal thought. Also, not have a really good opinion of politics, politicians, and really an apathetic relationship with the government. What's your thoughts about that perspective? And, what's been your experience so far? Because you've worked intimately close with government. You've also collaborated with government. You've also been on the other side of government, getting them to the side you want things to be on. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, my students, and I taught at UNO, and as you mentioned, I taught at UNO taught here for 8 years in Cooper. The first day of the semester I used to give a quiz. And on that quiz it said, who's your state representative in the district that you live in? Who's your senator? People couldn't tell me. And that's the first thing. You must know who represents you. People died for you to have the right to vote. You should read, everybody can read the news on their smartphone now, right? So during the legislative session, every day, the newspaper features all the highlights from the legislative session. Read it, because they are doing things that impact higher education every day in Baton Rouge when the legislature's in session. And a lot of that's going to impact you as students, but also the world in which you live in. I use the example of the lottery. When we voted on the lottery in Louisiana, most people said, after it passed, they said, well, we thought it was dedicated to education. And the legislator said, did anybody read it the first time? There have been several, different dealings with the lottery, but when it passed when was that, 10 years ago, 15 years?
15
and
years.
They said, did you read it? Nobody read the constitutional amendment. They just pressed yes or no at the bottom of the ballot. You all have to vote. I don't care how you vote, but you have to vote. We have elections coming up in this community. United States Senator, Congress, judges, you have to vote. It's your right, and you have to use it.
You are the first African-American woman, and I think first woman, if I'm not mistaken.
First woman.
To serve as chairman of the Louis Armstrong International Airport Board.
Chairwoman.
Of the chairperson.
You asked me about women's rights, so I'm just asserting mine. I'm
Go ahead.
fighting for my seat at the table.
Go ahead, fight for it. First chairwoman of the Aviation Board. What can we expect from the airport? And what are some things that you might not know about the airport if you don't have an opportunity to really touch it from a perspective of being a board member, having a business there?
Well, we are building a new terminal, and it's going to be right off the interstate. So now, you have to exit and take the service road to get to the airport. You'll be able to exit the interstate and Kenner and drive right into the airport. It's going to be a beautiful facility with a consolidated checkpoint and all the bells and whistles of modern transportation. We have a contractor. We're getting ready to break ground. We have secured funding for it. It is going to change the face of this community for generations to come. Your children's children will travel in and out of this airport. And it's going to create opportunities, more than 13,000 construction jobs in the next few years. And we hope that it's completed in 2018 for the 300th anniversary of New Orleans. So you all should be excited about this, because this is this opportunity for everybody in this community, not just people who work at the airport, but all the businesses that are going to benefit from the economic spillover from the construction project.
When you see events like the shooting in Ferguson, and you see the reactions and what's been going on, from your position, your perspective, do we have a race issue in America, or rather, is the race issue what you're hearing when you're turning on the news and you read a newspaper and you're assessing what's going on? What do you see the issue being, and what's your perspective on it?
We have a long road to walk in the area of race relations in this country. Yes, we've made progress, but I think we've got a lot of challenges ahead. And part of it is about people, it's twofold. Some of it is economic. When people feel like other people are taking their jobs, other people are getting a better life than them, you see a lot of frustration, discord, and discontent. But part of it is just stepping back and seeing people for who they really are. Respecting people for who they really are instead of a color. I get tired now that people say, I was talking to Catherine, she's a smart black woman. As opposed to, I was talking to Catherine, a very smart person. We've got to get beyond color in this country. We've got to get to a point where people see people for who they really are. And I know that's maybe sounds naive to some people, or idealistic, but I believe that we are moving forward as a country. Because I don't have any children, but I look at my nieces and my nephews, and their world is vastly different from mine. I went to a school where I was one of the few African American students in the entire school. My nieces and nephews live in a world that's very different. They're friends. They have a very diverse group of friends and diverse experiences and different experiences. So you all are the future. And look around this classroom. Everybody looks different, right? Start, when you refer to people, when you talk to people, when you interact with people, see them as people. And stop being, oh, John, the black student, Kathy, the white lady. Those are colors. And they don't have anything to do with the content of that person's character, their beliefs, their values, or why they're here at the University of New Orleans.
Tell me the most challenging experience you've had in your professional career, and how did you get through it?
I've had a lot.
First one that comes to mind.
Well, oh, wow, where do I begin? I've had, being a lobbyist for 25 years, I've had a lot of crazy experiences, but I will share one with you. There was a piece of legislation that was filed in Baton Rouge that the end result would mean that the city of New Orleans was going to lose millions and millions of tax dollars. And everyone said, all the guys, my male lobbyists said, we got this. We're going to get this bill passed, and nobody's going to stop it. And I thought, what am I going to do? Everyone's against me. I don't have any allies. How am I going to get this done? But I knew it was so important. And my mayor at the time, my boss, was like, we can't let this bill pass because the city of New Orleans is going to lose. So I went to some of my colleagues who worked for other parishes, and I said, what are y'all doing about this? And we said, let's form a coalition. We're going to get together and we're going to work hard. And we killed that bill. we killed it. Because at the end of the day, we developed a coalition of people from different areas of government, different walks of life, different concerns, different politics, because they understood why this bill is not good for not only our parish, but for parishes across the state. And I think the moral of that story is that you can't do things alone. Sometimes you've got to find people where there's a common denominator. You've got to find people who share the same concerns that you have and the same interests and the same values and want the same things and work hard to work through the challenges. I've had some crazy things happen to me in my career, but you know, they haven't defeated me. And I'll share this with you, Irvin. I went through, I think, 5 years in a row where just everything that happened, I thought, man, I felt like I had a rain cloud over my head. It's like everything I touched just disintegrated. And so I went to talk to a gentleman who is very, very successful and who I admire tremendously. And we were just talking about challenges. And he said, you know, when I was younger, I had 10 years where I was walking in the desert, felt like. He said, but I went to work every day. I showed up. I packed my little lunch. Didn't know if I was going to make my mortgage payment. He said, and then one day the sun just broke. So life's going to throw you some challenges in your job and your personal life and everywhere in between. It's just, it's not what happens to you, it's how you choose to deal with it. That's what I think.
Give me your most memorable, favorite, impactful teacher or professor.
That's a real hard question. I would say my most impactful teacher was my mother. And my father, both of them, but my mother in particular, because she was such an example for me of what a woman should be. And I strive every day to remember all the lessons that she taught me.
What should a woman be?
Mm-hmm.
What should a woman be?
A woman should have pride. She should be honorable and decent and kind. She should be nurturing and good-hearted and smart. Not book smart necessarily, but smart. Smart about how you run your life. I will tell you this. In my career, you asked me a challenge. As a woman, particularly in the area of government relations, I had to decide early in my career, and these are lessons that are embedded in the teachings of my mother, what kind of person I wanted to be, how I wanted people to view me in my profession, in a male-dominated profession, which means not trying to be seen at every event, not trying to do everything and go everywhere, but to make smart choices, good choices, best choices for me as a woman. So I would say a lot of that comes from the teaching of my mother, and of course my father, who's still living. I quote him every day. I call it the teamerisms. I'm always saying another teamerism, and people laugh. Like my father used to tell us, nothing comes to you in your sleep but your dreams. So don't nap, because you'll sleep your life away. Nothing comes to you in your sleep but your dreams.
We do a post questionnaire where you tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, can I do something different?
No, you're going to be good at this. Everybody's done it. You're going to be great. You ready?
Okay. I had something I wanted to share with the group, too. But
We're going to do that right after this.
Okay.
What's your favorite word?
Happy.
What's your least favorite word?
Sad.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
My dollhouses.
What turns you off?
Poverty.
What is your favorite curse word?
Shucks. Aw, shucks.
You know, ain't no way in the world I'm gonna let you get away with that one. What is your favorite curse word?
Darn it.
What sound or noise do you love?
Laughter.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Anger.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, since I can't be an architect because I'm not good at math, I'd like to play music.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'm letting you in.
Okay, what is it you want to go through with?
This is something that I prepared for a group that I spoke to yesterday, and I thought it might be helpful. It's Cheryl's advice for young leaders. So number one, throw away your playbook. Just take chances and reap huge rewards. Number two, leave every job on a good note. Always be able to go back if you want to. Number three, get out of your comfort zone, shake things up, and always try something new. Number four, sow seeds and harvest bountiful crops. Grow something, start something that lives on. Number five, practice the art of saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong, please forgive me, and I love you. Those are words you will use throughout your life. Number six, lead with caution and compassion. In other words, what would Jesus do? Learn something new every day. Number eight, remember the ladder rule. Passing people up and down on the way up and on the way down. You never know. Number nine, be an aggressive listener. I talked a lot about that today. And number 10, jump off a cliff and land on a cloud. That's Cheryl's advice.
We now open up the floor for questions for Dr. Teamer.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your mother's name?
Mary.
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 Say, for some reason you weren't able to work where you are right now. Which of your previous jobs would you want to go back to? Which one did you find like most redeeming?
Well, I don't know that I wouldn't want to go back, but the one that I found that I hope I had the opportunity to make the biggest impact with was my time as the lobbyist for the city of New Orleans, because I worked on a lot of legislation that's actually on the books now that people are using that has helped change the destiny of this community. So I'm proud of that, and it's something that's going to live on for forever. And so it's a chance to do some good, and I'm proud of that. Yes, ma'am.
On the aviation board, are you guys expecting the New Orleans Armstrong Airport to be like a hub or anything in the future?
We would love for it to be. And part of the challenge with the current airport is that you have to go through security at each terminal.
It sucks.
So we are redesigning the airport so that once you enter the airport, you're in, and you can go to any concourse and or food place or wherever you want to go once you're in, you're in. And of course, our goal is to attract as many flights as possible.
So you're saying it's a connectivity issue when you go on the airport because...
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, can you imagine trying to catch a flight and you've got to go all the way through security again? That's a challenge. And there are a lot of other reasons, but that, we're designing a new airport to meet the challenges of modern day transportation post 9/11.
I asked T if we were getting a Starbucks and she got mad. Are we getting a Starbucks?
Who's to say? But we have what we've tried to do is we have so many iconic local brands.
I know.
And we've tried to showcase them. If you've been to the airport now, you see all the iconic local brands that are in the airport.
I was just joking about Starbucks.
Are you a spokesman for Starbucks?
Not at all. I love PJs.
Is the current concourse going to stay in use after the own built?
No, we're going to demolish most of the current airport, and D will be used for charter flights. That's
I
the
work out
plan.
there, I was curious.
Okay. That's the plan. Now, it could change. If you win a lottery tomorrow and you want to buy it, we'll be happy to negotiate.
What do you do there?
General contracting work, maintenance work,
That's
charter
awesome.
flights, stuff of that nature.
Great.
It's great.
Next question.
Yeah.
Sorry to stay on the subject, but is the airport going to expand? Because I've been to other ones and ours is pretty small, especially in comparison to Houston. I mean, you can look in for miles and there's just runways and runways.
Well, we're not going to be as big as Houston.
But why don't you tell them what the actual cost of building a runway?
Yeah, it's billions of dollars. This project is going to, when we complete this project, we will have spent more than $800 million if we were to build all new runways, and I don't think we could get the funding. It would be in the billion, 5 billion and up. So this is a new terminal using the same runway that we have now, basically just flipping the project. So it's going to be on the opposite side, on the interstate side. But we're going to be using the same runway. And you can you can look at the design on the Aviation Board website. If you go to MSY.com, you can actually pull up the renderings and see what it's going to look like. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about your time in Japan and Germany. Nothing was spoken of that. What did you do there, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I did, in my career, I've done 2 professional fellowships. In Germany, we traveled around the entire country and studied and met with mayors and their staff, and it was a great experience. And in Japan, it was a program where you did a partial lecture program and then actually stayed with a family for the last part of it. But I encourage all of you to travel, and learn as many languages as you can. I'm getting ready to start taking Spanish. I studied French. I'm not good at it, but I mean, the world is there's so much happening in the world. So travel, just go for it.
A question and a comment. Can you make your 10 rules for success available to us?
Sure.
I started writing them and realized I was never gonna
I'll
keep
send
up
them
with
to
it.
Nicole. Be happy to.
And then the lottery. I kind of remember walking with a coworker back in 1990 to buy the first lottery tickets. That's a little more than 15 years, I think.
Oh, yeah.
1990, you said?
I just remember where I worked that I walked with. I didn't buy it, she did, but.
But the takeaway from that,
Right, I know.
the takeaway from it is, whenever there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot, we all need to read it, and we need to read it from top to bottom. You know, I have a friend who used to say her grandmother would take the newspaper endorsement page. That was, she always, whatever the newspaper said, that's what she voted. She took that piece of paper to the polling place with her, and that's how she voted.
But I do remember that being the thought, that most people did think it was dedicated.
But, you know, the important thing is, regardless of how you vote, just educate yourself before you vote. Because our elected officials work for us, we don't work for them. And so their job evaluation is an election.
I just think a lot of people feel like, you know, if you're working, you're a contractor, out, you know, working on a job site, and you're in school and you're doing a bunch of different things, and an amendment comes up that doesn't seem like it's affecting whatever you're doing right now. What is the
Incentive.
Yeah, other than it's your right, you need to exercise it. What's the incentive really of going, researching what the issue is, finding out about it, and it may be something like, do you want to add 1 cent to your water bill, or to your real estate bill, and maybe you don't even own real estate, and
But you might in the future. And I'm going to tell you, lots of things happen. And I'm at the city council on a regular basis, and I've been amazed at how many people now show up. And they've always shown up, but more and more. And I don't know if it's social media and people's ability to access information in a fast way, but everything that happens impacts your life. And I know people get overwhelmed with day to day, but you've got to pay attention. You know, you've got to pay. Great democracies were toppled by people because people didn't pay attention. You know, this is our community, and we get to decide what happens in it. And we should be the ones that educate our legislators and our council people on how we want our community to be.
I think a lot of folks feel like the leaders of the professionals, you know, you for instance, somebody like you would know more about what the tax should be in a business, what that tax amount should be. You should know about it, how much money it's going to make for tourism. What do I care about how many visitors are coming to town? Or like I had a student say maybe about 2 years ago in class, why do we even need visitors? Because I don't like tourists.
Well, those visitors spend money. And not just on Canal Street or in a hotel or in the French Quarter. It's the trickle down, the ripple effect of tourism that drives this economy. With, as we said earlier, more than $6 billion in economic spend. But to answer your question about the person who says, what does that mean to me? You know, everything has a consequence. Yeah. And so you can either choose to bury your head in the sand and not pay attention, or you can keep yourself informed. You're not going to act on every single issue, but stay informed. You know, the city council just passed comprehensive changes to its vehicle for hire ordinances to allow for on-demand car service. Do you all know what that is? So that means you can now, you're going to be able to go on your smartphone and order a car, and the car will come and zip up, and you can watch it on your phone. Well, it sounds, you all say, well, that sounds neat and great. What's the problem? Well, the city council had to have several meetings because you have a whole cab industry that just spent a lot of money changing their cabs, conforming to new regulations.
Supposedly changing their cabs.
Well, so, a council person's responsibility was to make sure that they understood everyone's concerns, to allow cab drivers, vehicle for hire drivers, limo drivers, everybody to have an opportunity to come to the table and express their concern. And then we trust them by electing them that they're going to use that information in a way that benefits the community as a whole, right? So, I mean, if you're a cab driver and you're not reading newspaper and you are just an independent driver and you don't know what's happening, you wake up one day and your business is impacted, that's a problem. So I'm just asking you to stay informed, that's all.
Last two questions. Cheryl Teamer. Who's got the first one?
Yeah.
Alright, say you were to go back and change because that law degree to something else, because it doesn't seem like you wanted to stay in that too long. Where would you want to focus your studies in if you had to go back now?
Yeah. Well, I don't regret getting a law degree. It was the best thing for me. Let me just say that, because with a law degree, you can do anything. Because it teaches you to think very aggressively and analytically. It forces you to look at an issue from a 360-degree perspective to say the answer is not yes or no. There's logic to it. You know, that's what lawyers do every day. They don't give you a straight answer. They say, well, you know what? You could have crossed the street this way, or you could have gone this way. Or if you went that way, you'd still get across the street. You're just taking a different route, right? As opposed to you can only go one way. So in my career, that's been very helpful to me because it's taught me to look at things from different perspectives. But I think if I had to start all over again, I probably would go to medical school. I don't know why.
That's interesting. Last question.
So as a lobbyist, who signs your checks, and do they decide your stance, or do you have any leeway with that? Like, how does it work being a lobbyist?
Well, it depends on you can be a lobbyist tomorrow if you decide that's what you want to do.
You don't have to have a degree or anything?
No. If you decide that you want to represent the United Students for Change, you can go down to the city council, fill out a comment card, and testify. They don't have to pay you. Doesn't have to be a structured position. If you decide that the United College Students for Change want to go to Baton Rouge and comment on the state's allocation of funding for higher education, you all can do that. My students at UNL, every year they had to go to Baton Rouge. They had to spend a day at the Capitol, and they had to work on a legislative issue. Everybody in this room can be their own advocate. You know, advocacy is about communicating your issue, making sure that people understand your concerns, and educating our elected officials about the impact of legislation on our lives, on our community. So some lobbyists are not paid. They volunteer. They represent. They're community activists. They're advocates. But they are lobbyists who are paid. My first job as a lobbyist or a representative was for the city of New Orleans. I represented the city, which is a hard job. It's a very hard job. And then I worked for a large law firm where I represented clients who had legislative issues, and then I represented one of the largest companies in the country on gaming issues. So, there are different kinds of jobs in the government relations world. But to answer your question, you can be your own lobbyist right now, today.
Let's thank our guest, Cheryl Team. Thank you so much. 10 points are great. 10 points are great.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, this is good. This is good. Completely different perspective. Of course, Steve has a really good